And I'll join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Good to see you all. Thanks for being here. Anyone here for the first time? Now that I've put you on the spot, you don't have to answer, but care to share why you're here? Go ahead.
I'm Natalie. I moved from Oregon, where I had my sangha there, and Susan, somewhere there, told me she was coming here, so
Right on.
I'm here for my new sangha.
Well, welcome to San Diego from Oregon. Hi.
Yeah, this is my first time here. I actually am from Oregon too.
Oh, there you go. We have a limit at 2, so we're anyone else here from Oregon? Sorry. Yeah. And what made you decide to come here?
It's part of the program.
Yeah.
I was doing one in other churches.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Glad you're here. There was another hand or voice somewhere I saw or heard. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm new to San Diego from LA and just taking new suggestions.
Nice.
Yes.
Good. Well, also welcome to San Diego.
Thank you.
Those of you who keep coming back, why? Why do you keep coming back? I mean, I say the same thing week after week for like 12 years. Those who keep coming back, why do you keep coming back?
It brings me joy to be here.
Brings you joy to be here. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
I keep on forgetting what you said last week.
You keep you can always count on Chuck, to be honest. That's for sure. Yes. Thanks,
I
Chuck.
didn't realize how much I needed it until I started coming.
Say that again. Sorry.
I didn't realize how much I needed it until I started coming.
You didn't realize how much you needed it until you started coming. That's such a common view. Not that the others weren't great as well, but often we get calls from people who are curious about Buddhism. They go into Google and they start, Buddhism San Diego or whatever, and they come across places and they call. And I'll spend like 17 minutes on the phone with them answering a million questions. And no matter how many times I say, you just have to show up and then it'll make sense, there's always that additional question, and I always answer it. But what I'm really getting at is ultimately when people are ready for this practice and they start to show up, then it makes sense. And if people are at a place in their lives where they're not ready for this practice and they show up, then they don't come back, and that's okay too. I'll never forget the first time, 2003, that I stepped into an actual Buddhist temple. And I went in for meditation and Dharma talk, and I sat down right kind of like up here. There's a temple about a mile down the road. And I looked up at this big, beautiful golden sunshine ray of light Buddha. And I just was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the world. I don't ever want to leave. And I talked to the nun afterwards and I said, I'll be back tomorrow. And then 6 months went by and I never went back. And then eventually after 6 months, I went back and, been at it pretty much every day since. But there's that mind that we carry with us. And very often people will describe it as, well, I started reading about Buddhism or going to a Buddhist place, and what I read or what I felt or what I saw resonated with how I already saw the world. And that's another very common approach, especially for those who might be brand new, is that what you eventually learn through meditation and Buddhist practice is, if it resonates with you, that means a lot of these thoughts and views have been with you most of your life. And Buddhist teachings are really just kind of a structure or framework for everything to begin to make sense. And for some reason, I think when we learn something from something else and from someone else, very often when it's a complete stranger, we often listen more than, how many of you have loved ones? How many of you listen to them? I saw a lot of hands go up and a lot of hands go down. So no matter how much, and then I see two people looking at each other and nodding their heads. So yes, a lot of times those that we know and love point out things, call us out on things, challenge us, question us, and But then a complete stranger sits up here somewhere and tells you to be nice to people, and you're like, that's really wise. So I appreciate y'all sharing that. Last thing I'll say on that is, this isn't a plug for people to clean, but of course, if you want to clean, you're always welcome to. There was a couple that came here, still comes here, and years ago, one of them made a comment about the other, saying that this one individual spends so much time cleaning at the temple, but never cleans at home. And I found that always very interesting, because these are little signs to remember that what we're learning in places like this, Buddhist temples, meditation places, yoga, whatever spiritual practice you have, we're not learning just to isolate it to that one place. Because it really doesn't matter how kind and wonderful and gentle you are here, or how much you clean here, or how forgiving you are of people here. If the moment you step outside and you go back into your day-to-day life and you don't bring that practice with you to everybody else, then this was just a little tiny sliver of your day. So the practice is to bring it outside of these walls and ultimately create a temple that is your mind. Your mind and your heart is your temple. And the practice is to treat that as such. So, all right. So with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. To those of us who are joining us online, welcome. Good to see you all. Feel free to introduce yourself and say hello and ask any questions if you wish. All right, so meditation, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward slightly. If you're on a chair or bench, however you're sitting, also just gently pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Movement does not make you a bad meditator. It just means you have an itch or your leg hurts. So please allow yourself to be comfortable. I will guide us as we begin, and we will settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever's comfortable. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As your mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. each thought, each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. And compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Imagine going a day without being disturbed by someone. Imagine going an hour without being disturbed by someone. Some of you won't even make it back to wherever you're going before you're disturbed. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape as often people think it is. It is direct perception into this present moment. And the present moment is very often quite difficult, challenging, brings lots of obstacles. And we call these opportunities and moments to practice Buddhist teachings. They are opportunities to reflect on our own greed, our own anger, and our own ignorance. This very simply is what the Buddha referred to as the three poisons. This is the cause of all of our suffering. As much as we'd love to blame all of our suffering in the world on other people and places and things, it's on us. We are responsible for our thoughts and our words and our actions. And so we practice generosity, compassion, and wisdom, as the Buddha taught, to overcome our own suffering. But as long as we have the view that Buddhism is going to be the escape or the thing that's going to fix us or save us or make us better, then we're missing really the essence of what the Buddha was teaching. His teachings are simply an opportunity to reflect and have everything and everyone be a mirror, looking back at our role, our response. And this is tough. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's not a business. It's a practice. It's a way of life. And the only thing I want to touch on briefly before we open up to questions is in Buddhist teachings, there's what's called the 6 paramitas. The word paramita translates to perfection, but please don't let that mislead you in thinking that you have to be perfect. As Suzuki Roshi always said, we're perfect exactly how we are, and we all could use a little improvement. So please stop beating yourself up so much. But let's look at what is that little improvement. And when you look at the 6 paramitas, these practices in the bodhisattva means enlightened being. These practices are what we use to help us go from a world of suffering, depression, sadness, anger, all the craziness that sits in our head all day long, to a peaceful, happy day. And these 6 practices are generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. Generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom. And the one I just want to touch on briefly as a reminder for Chuck and everybody else is diligence. This is one I think is often overlooked within Buddhist practice, Buddhist teachings, spiritual journeys. It requires a tremendous amount of effort for these teachings to become a regular part of your life. And what I mean by that is, somebody asked me the other day, the context is somewhat irrelevant, but someone asked me the other day, I was explaining this place, and I said, we don't have teachers. We're not set up in this model like most Buddhist places I've done in the West, where there's this teacher-student relationship, this one-on-one dynamic. We're not set up that way for so many reasons I don't have enough time to get into right now. But that's not how we operate. This is all just unenlightened, regular, peer-led stuff, right? Unenlightened folks leading unenlightened folks. No offense to all of you enlightened ones out there. And so the question was, well, do people just come there and then go elsewhere looking for a teacher? And I've had this question come up a lot. Very often people come here and say, I'm looking for a teacher. And what I found over the last 19 years looking at Buddhism in this country, specifically here in San Diego, obviously, is that most people aren't really ready for a Buddhist teacher. It's hard enough to just put gentle reminders of be nice to people. That's hard enough for most people. And so this idea of being diligent, where I'm going with that is very often in a space like this, we see people that show up once a week, or, they have their thing they do once a week here, whatever it might be. And that's beautiful. But what about the other 6 days of the week? This is where diligence is critical. I'm sitting in a room with an incredibly diligent group of people. How many of you watch Netflix? Do I need to continue this example, or you see where I'm going with this? Right? How many of you have just binged through a series in 18 hours straight? You were lucky enough to get up and go pee, right? We don't even have to move now. Just, Uber, sorry, I'm watching Stranger Things. I can't get up. I need, my $40 cheeseburger right now. So we're all so diligent in so many areas of our lives. We all have potential to be incredibly diligent with everything in our lives. But when you look at the paramitas, you have to apply, you don't have to, I suggest you apply wisdom to diligence. Diligence doesn't mean just getting in a car and driving in the wrong direction for 20 days. You'll end up somewhere, but not where you're trying to go. So my suggestion as a practice is to look at diligence in your life outside of just coming here once or twice a week or whatever it is. Are the things you're working hard at beneficial to your spiritual journey and to those around you? Or are they harmful? Look at how you spend your time. And I'm not suggesting you abandon Netflix. That's not my point. That's just an example to show us all how diligent we can be. We all have that ability to really focus, concentrate, and work hard at something. I mean, it's not easy to stay focused on a series for 8 hours straight. It takes a lot of effort to ignore everything else and just focus on the entire season. But we managed to do that quite well. Now can you apply that practice to things that are important on your spiritual journey? And no teacher can do that for you. You have to do that yourselves. So look at how you spend your time throughout the day and see how productive it is in helping you become a kinder, gentler human being, or how detrimental it is to helping you become a kinder, gentler human being. So it really is just an awareness and an observation, that simple, of how we spend our time. So with that, I'll pause. As always, really prefer just to open up to questions. And we'll use the rest of our time this morning for questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And for those who are online, again, welcome. There's a chat box there on your screen. Feel free to type anything you'd like there. I guess anything you like, but referring to questions, really. So thoughts, questions? Yes?
From what you're saying, I wonder, when are you ready for a teacher?
I have no idea.
Because you said,
I just said most of you are not ready for a teacher. I didn't say I know when you're ready for a teacher. Thanks for playing, Chuck. I know. There's a great Buddhist expression, phrase, quote, and it says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So, yeah. I just wanted to give you a concrete answer, that's all.
I have a question about several of the meetings that to.
Yeah.
You have used, I believe, 3 different words, which to me are synonymous with selflessness, non-self, and a couple of other words that I thought, well, I think he means selflessness to be thinking about. And I was thinking about that, and I'm trying to relate that to the feeling that I like to do things for myself to bring myself happiness and joy. So is that contradictory to non-self?
Yeah, great. Go ahead. You're done. Is that it? Okay, I didn't want to start speaking until I knew you were done. So your question, and just to repeat for those millions of followers joining us at home, and I'll, as always, just try to paraphrase it, but your question is in relationship to a few meetings that you've come to. I've used a few words that are synonymous to non-self, like selflessness as an example. And your question or comment is that you do a lot of things in your life that for yourself that bring you joy and make you happy. And your question, I believe, is that contradictory to non-self, right? Okay. Yes and no. So I cleared that up as much as I did Chuck's question. There's another great Buddhist expression from Zen Master Dogen. I believe he's the first to say it, or at least to my knowledge, that's where I learned it. And he was the founder of the Soto school of Zen Buddhism, lived 1200 to 1253 in Japan. And much of what we know of Zen practice that has survived today is really from his teachings, which go all the way back to the teaching of the Buddha. And he said that you must get to know the self before you can get rid of the self. So I'm going to try to keep this without making this into a whole talk about non-self, because you've heard me talk about that, and I don't want to go that route right now. I just want to stick with the question, which is, well, what about me? And that's why the first thing that came up in my mind was, actually it was the third thing that came up in my mind, but this is the best of the 3, I think, is I must get to know myself before I can get rid of myself. And that doesn't mean destroy yourself or disappear. It means the self, which is the ego, the stories, right, that we think are concrete and real. So while we're on this journey, you ever been in a really bad mood?
Yeah, a couple of times.
All right. I love how you can see smiles even underneath the mask. You know, they go all the way up into the eyes. So when you're in a really bad mood, how willing are you to do things to help others? Not so much. You ever been in a really good mood? And when you're in a really good mood, how willing are you to do things to help others? Making sure you bring joy and happiness into your life is incredibly important. Now, I know, and everybody who shares Buddhist teachings has such a different approach. I do take, as you can tell from the handful of times you've been here, I do take a very serious approach to this. I'm not the kind of warm, fuzzy, hug you, everything's going to be great. I mean, the Buddha said you're going to suffer and you're going to die. That's pretty much laid out day one. So the question is, if we're going to suffer and we're going to die, what's going to happen along the way? And how can we have joy and happiness while we're going through this journey? Because if we're going to bring this, as an example, bodhisattva practice of liberating all sentient beings from suffering, meaning if we're just going to spend our lives helping people, if we're miserable, we're not going to be able to do that. Now, the one kind of caveat, asterisk there to focus on, or at least I just want to highlight, is we also know, I'm sure most of us, that when we are in a bad mood, if we go do something for someone else or help someone else, it very often, right, can put us in a good mood. But not if we're just in a constant state of misery and depression every single day. Not beneficial to the self that then has to become the non-self, or the awareness of non-self. So I would say, does that make sense so far?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say, not just for you, but for everybody, is to always look at the middle path and find balance. That yes, it's great to be of service and help others and see who's suffering and volunteer and do things out in the community that are beneficial to others. But you have to take care of your own house too. And that's really important. There's a balance there. So, yeah. And I think as we're getting to know the self, if we recognize, wow, myself really is angry, or myself really is sad, or myself is really depressed, or myself is really anxious, whatever that recognition of those emotions are, I shouldn't even say myself, the awareness of the emotions that we are then calling ourselves. We have to give that attention as well, to not just ignore that. So, well, if I'm angry every single day, I should probably look at that gently and lovingly. Yeah. So the intense approach I find very beneficial, of just being honest with ourselves, but also, not being afraid to be gentle and kind towards yourself, which clearly was something that took me a long time to do. Yeah. Other thoughts, questions?
I just kind of like, I definitely agree with that, because, now that I've been sober for a while now, and, after a long time of excessive alcohol use and whatnot, now that I've taken care of myself, and just done the little things, it was important for me to do that so I could help. And I could, like you were saying, mirror, like the kind of treatment that I want to be. So I definitely see that as not being a bad thing, taking care of yourself now. It feels good to be able to look at myself and see something that I like to project onto other people.
Yeah, definitely. And just to kind of retell it again for those who are watching virtually, your comment is, in general, after a long time of being not sober, or now that you've been sober for a while, you definitely can agree and relate to the fact that if you take care of yourself, what I heard you say really is that you're then more willing to do things to take care of others and help others and be there for others, and how you project yourself onto others really changes from taking care of yourself. If we don't take care of ourselves, and we are in a miserable state of mind a lot, then that's what we project onto people, and that's not fun. We've all, I'm guessing, been there on both sides of that. And the Buddha really taught this kind of concept and idea of being able to sit with strangers and be with people, whether they're loved ones and family or absolute strangers. And the Buddha taught very clearly to see everyone else as a Buddha, because they have what the Buddha called bodhicitta, Buddha nature, the potential. Some people refer to it as a Buddha to be. And so we all have the potential to fully awaken and just be kind, gentle people. So why would we harm people on the way to that? And we harm them because we are harmed, or we feel we've been harmed. And it's hard for us to come out of that. So good work coming out of it. Other questions or thoughts?
So I've already noticed some similarities, like you mentioned. When people come to show up, they see some similarities in themselves.
They see some what? Sorry?
Similarities. I guess I have a similarity. Like when I get up in the morning, I say to myself, everything's easy to be easy, it's hard to be hard. So I can wake up and I can be easy, I can be nice, I can be happy, and I'll spend the rest of my day, I'll just run into a bunch of easy, nice, happy people. But if I wake up in that mood, I'm gonna walk out the door and the first person is gonna pick me up, right? But then it's just like a spiral all day. I get get stuck in a bad mood, and all I find is other people in a bad mood.
Yeah.
Yeah, some similarities.
Yeah, it's great. There's what you just shared is there's another Zen expression. There's a couple of those, but it says to the worm and horseradish, the world is horseradish. So those bad moods, as you're saying, if you wake up in that, then we continue to perpetuate, share that, spread that, be aware of that. When we're in a bad mood, we don't often want to see people in a good mood. It's like, I don't want you in a good mood. I'm in a bad mood. I need you to be in a bad mood with me. Anyone who's ever been in an unhealthy, toxic relationship can fully relate to that. But then all of a sudden you're in this great, happy, cheerful mood when you wake up. And yeah, that's what you see. That's what you draw to. That's what you get excited about. And that changes that's your karma, your action that you're bringing in. Karma means action. And we generate karma 3 ways, as the Buddha taught: body, speech, mind. So what you think, what you say, and what you do comes from your thoughts, goes to your words, and goes to your actions. And that drastically changes your day. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Yes.
Recently with this discussion too, you had an acronym: sober,
Sober.
stop, observe, breathe. I forget the rest of it, say, engage, recover. I don't know if that's correct. For me, it's like you wake up in a good mood, you wake up in a bad mood. But how do you get to a place of peace, right? Instead of really happy and really sad. So I find that observation piece is really important to quieting down my head, and really taking what's outside and then using that breath till I get that space I need. And I can do that here. But next week I'm going to see family at home. We get 5 minutes before we're home. So for me, I'm like, okay, this is really important, because I think reflecting and our mirror neurons and stuff, what do I want to bring most is compassion. What will bring that? If I cannot open my mouth.
Silence is golden, and it wasn't the Buddha who said that, but
So the breathing that we practice here, like I practice every day, the traffic's getting better. My traffic's getting better. And that's what I'm going to be hanging on to next.
yeah. So I'll try to recap that. I usually do this talk around the holidays, and I'm not going to do it. I'll just kind of keep it brief right now, but very often around, holiday, Thanksgiving time, these are the great, November, December are the greatest months to practice Buddhism, because we are triggered. I mean, every day is a great opportunity, but as you said, you're okay practicing here, but next month, or did you say next weekend? Next weekend, you're going to visit family, and after about 5 minutes, you're done. You didn't say that. I'm translating your words into you're done. So the practice and the acronym that you referred to, for those who haven't heard it, is sober. That when you find yourself, and again, going in that moment, a couple things come to mind. One is the teaching of impermanence. And then I'll kind of close with this thought and this idea. The Buddha taught that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. Thoughts are conditioned. Every single thought you have is conditioned based on prior thoughts, prior experiences. Your entire life's experiences have led to every single thought that you have. Period. And what that means is, kind of tying these 2 things together, and then I'll come back to sober, that yes, when you wake up and you're in a good mood and everything's wonderful, that's great. But impermanence teaches us what? That good mood's going to go away. It's not going to stay that long. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe a day, maybe, a week. But that good mood's going to go away. And then we find ourselves in a bad mood. And then we love impermanence. We're okay with impermanence when it takes us from a bad mood to a good mood. My suggestion with that is, and I understand the semantics, and it's a great example, so I'm not necessarily attacking what you said, but when we look at impermanence and we label things as good moods or bad moods, or good feelings or bad feelings, impermanence tells us they're just temporary moments of emotions that arise based on an experience. a thought. And if in that moment, and this comes to the sober, which I get to in a minute, if in that moment we recognize, here's, the Buddha called them unpleasant, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral thoughts. Not good or bad, because we get so conditioned to think like, oh, you're a good person, or oh, you're a bad person. Look at it as, this is an unpleasant thought, meaning this brings me feelings that are not so great. Or an unpleasant action, meaning this action is going to bring feelings to others that are not so great. Or pleasant. The opposite of that. So when we are in these moments with family, we're being triggered, and we have an unpleasant thought, what usually follows that unpleasant thought?
Mean words.
Mean words. Judgment. All that stuff. So much. And so this opportunity to recognize in that moment, this person says something, I don't like it, I'm getting angry, and we just respond. Sober is an opportunity to stop in that moment. Just stop. Observe what's going on. They are saying things, this is triggering me, they've been in my life for 40 years, and I've been doing this Buddhist thing for 3 months. How come it's not working yet? 40 years of anger towards somebody is a long time to cut through. So it takes practice, coming back to diligence. But if we stop and we observe that that emotion is temporary, and then we breathe, we take some deep breaths. This all happens real quick. Then we expand. We expand to recognize that our entire life, your entire weekend, is more than just that one person who you already know is going to say the thing that's going to piss you off. You already know it's going to happen. So we expand to recognize that the weekend, have a pleasant weekend, a joyful weekend, enjoy the time, is much bigger than that one moment that you're triggered because you're still carrying something around from 4 years ago. And then you respond. And maybe that response is silence, if that's all we can muster. Right? The silence is probably better in that situation. And I'm a big fan that there are times in life silence is not appropriate. Please speak up. So I'm not advocating silence in all conditions and all situations. But in situations like you're describing, it sounds like silence might be better. And I want to kind of close with this example. I share this very often, but haven't done it in a while. Years ago, this was I was doing a meditation out at San Diego State at KPBS, and there was a kid, 20-year-old intern, and I was doing meditation there every Monday. So he came in, and this was like week 3 of his meditation practice. And he says, Jeff, I figured out how this stuff helps me, or how this can benefit me. And I said, well, how's that? And he said, well, I was at a party Friday night, and I saw some guy talking to my girlfriend, and I got really angry. And I recognized in that moment, I should take some deep breaths and walk away. I said, Cole, that's wonderful. What happened? And he said, I hit him. And I looked at him and I said, congratulations. And he was like, what? Congratulations? I hit the guy, I got into a fight. I said, yes, but there was a moment where you knew there was another choice. You saw your anger, you saw your frustration, you said to yourself, I should take some deep breaths and walk away, and then you punched the dude. Progress. Because 4 weeks ago, he never would have thought there was a remote possibility of there being any other option. You've been there? You're getting way too excited about this story. Right? I've been telling the story for years, so I it's that gap, that moment that we realize, wow, we have another choice. And in that moment, so much liberation from our own minds and in our hearts is possible. But again, it takes practice. It takes that diligence that I'm talking about. It's not just listening to one Dharma talk on YouTube and picking up a Pema Chodron book, and doing your, it's a process. It takes time. And so you want to be patient with yourself as you go through this journey. So Good luck next weekend, Kira. We will miss you. We'll look for a full report. We will all hold you accountable the following Saturday. In fact, I might even call you up and have you give, like a homework report to the class on how your weekend with family was. I've never done that, but. All right, so we're going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the more than 6 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic and their family and friends who continue to suffer to this day. To all of those in Ukraine and surrounding areas who suffer, and those children and adults that lost lives in Texas and Chicago shootings. May their families be at peace and free from suffering. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every night we have different practices going on, different folks leading from a different Buddhist tradition. We have a recovery sangha we've had for about 12 years, so anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be, that meets a few times a week here as well as virtually. We have a family sangha that is back and up and running and stronger and larger than I could have ever even imagined. But that meets once a month. They actually have a family day right now down at the Bay. So all of that's on the website. Day of Silence retreat is coming up. Day of Silence, you do have to RSVP for. We capped it at 17, and I think there's a few spots left, but that is this next Saturday. It starts at 8, and it goes till close to noon. So it's 4 hours of silence. If 20 minutes of silence is torture, then I strongly suggest you try it for 4 hours. It makes 20-minute sits that much easier. So it's not a straight 4-hour meditation. It's about 20-25-minute sits that has about a 5-minute break in between. And there's a walking meditation outside and cleaning meditation and things worked into it. So if you've never done a day of silence, it's a really beautiful practice. And again, that's the first Saturday of the month, so it'll be next Saturday at 8 a.m. Other than that, Kira is here. We get to enjoy Kira before you head home for family. Anyone who wants to help garden, we always need help in the garden, watering, raking. There's a whole mess out front from the palm trees and everything that falls. So if anyone wants to just grab a broom and sweep for 30 hours, 30 hours, that'd be great. 30 minutes, 30 hours is great too. You get enlightened quicker that way. And also there's a list by the door if anybody wants to help clean. All the X's that are on there were from last Saturday. So somebody can wipe those off and we get to start over. My master always said you have to sweep leaves every single day. And if you don't, what happens? Piles up. So take care of your mind every single day. Thank you all.